Good evening, 7:05. We just concluded the virtual office hours about half an hour ago. And several of you impressed upon me the need to make a little tutorial video of how to go about solving the Chapter 7 practice problems. So I have the slides here, or the slide, singular, here, and I have my little Excel sheet that kind of worked things up, and I figured I would just basically do the problem from scratch, even though you have the Excel sheet here. You don't need to cheat and look at it, of course. So you want to go just from scratch and figure out how to do everything that I'm asking you to do. So I'm going to make a new tab here. And in my Excel, it might not be in your Excel, I have, as part of the, I guess they call it a ribbon up top, I have this FRED tab, which is associated with the FRED, the Federal Reserve database. And it's kind of nice because instead of having to go to the link that I've given you here and have to search for these particular e-commerce retail sales, seasonally adjusted, not adjusted, instead of having to search for all that stuff on the website and download it from the website, the Fed has created this little FRED Excel add-in, which I have for here. And I can go here, and if I'll copy my title of this little series, and let me go to a new sheet that I just made. And within my little FRED tab here, I want to do a search for that particular series. Boom, search. There it is. Oops, I'll just do that and add it. And let me come over here too, because I will do the not, I think it's NSA. Series ID, search. There it is, select them all, add. Good to go. So, again, you probably won't want to do this because you can just go to the website and get the data itself. Since I'm going to be doing everything in Excel and I use this FRED tab for my consulting and other kinds of things that I do, it's already in here, so I figured I would just use it. I'm going to look back here for a second though, and what's probably going to happen is I don't know if the data values are going to be exactly the same. A lot of times there will be revisions that happen, so I'm just going to go and I'm going to get the FRED data, and it'll take a while to pull it in. Here we go. Made two columns for me. It goes back to, well, the same time period as the earlier one. I think that's the beginning of the series that Fred recorded. So, but yeah, I can see that the data values are a little bit different, so there's going to be a little bit of revision. So if you downloaded the whole series, then you could play with the numbers that I have here too. If you just wanted to play with the data that's already in the table that's in Moodle, you can go ahead and do that. I'm just going to play with the new data as it is. Okay, so I chopped those nasty decimal places off. And let me go in and copy my seasonally adjusted data. Go back to this tab, and I'll just paste it there. Got my unadjusted in the next column. Copy, go back here. Paste. Okay, now, so I've got the dates, I've got the seasonally adjusted data, seasonally unadjusted data, and actually I've already cheated a little bit because the Excel or the PowerPoint slide asks you to do a lot of the next steps, which are already entered in for you. So I've got a few extra observations going down to the second quarter of 2015, and I kind of kept my old regression results, at least the coefficient names over here, so I know which runs I'm going to do, which Excel or regression runs I'm going to do. Let me get rid of these because you're not supposed to see these yet. And I'll get rid of this too. Okay, so the slide asks me to make a column of T from 1 to 55. Well, that was based on the previous dates I was using, so it's what's going to be this time. And again, just a little trick. I've got the little box down in the corner. Can you see where I'm pointing? I've got the box down in the corner of the cells that I've highlighted, and when I hover over that, the little white cross symbol turns into a smaller black one. If I can double click on that, it kind of copies everything straight down to where there's no data left. And now I'm going to 63, so I could change this if I wanted to. Say this is now going to be 63 instead. Alright, make a Q4 dummy variable that is equal to 1 during month 10. So let me go back here and I'll say Q4, I'll name it that. During month 10, the way that the format these dates are in is the year and then the month. So I know the very first entry is the fourth quarter of 1999. Oops. I want it to be a 1 because it's a dummy variable, and 0 otherwise. So zeros for those other and here. Someone earlier asked if there's a quick way of doing this, and you could probably do an if statement and spend time making it run all the way down. That's probably the easier way to do it. I'll just kind of do things the old school way and just keep copying these down. I'll get there eventually. It won't take me too long. There we go. So all of my month 10s have this value of 1 associated with them. So I did the second part on here, and I've done all that in like under a minute, so look at that. Make a column labeled recess dummy. So let's go name that recess dummy. That is equal to 1 for months 2001-4. So let me figure out where that starts. 2001-4 starts right there, so I'll start that with a 1. There'll be some zeros above that. And this will run through 2001-10, because there was that short recession then. Just a few months, and back to zeros. And then the Big Daddy recession, 2008-1. That's what I call it anyway. Here, copy my zeros down for those years. This is going to run through 2009-7. Did you guys know the recession was that short? I mean, things may not be too fantastic where you live, but hey, we're not in the recession anymore. According to government statistics, everything is just rosy now. Okay, so my recession dummy variable is there. And again, I guess I didn't really specify too closely what's actually happening with these variables. The t variable is just a time variable for every quarter, so it's going to try to account for the fact that over time the sales have increased. And if you looked at the scatter plot, which I didn't actually do here, maybe I should do that too. Okay, let's do that. Let me look at, and I think I asked you to do seasonally unadjusted. So I'll do that combined with the unadjusted is here. And let me insert a scatter plot with lines. So I see a few things. First of all, I see that these sales are rising over time from the beginning. So that's why I included the t dummy variable, because again, as that t variable increases, then it's going to create hopefully a positive relationship between, as the time goes on, that I see my sales increase. So if I'm just kind of thinking ahead to what I think the regression results are going to show, I don't even know if I asked you to run a regression on this. I'll report a forecasting equation. So I would presume that that t variable is going to have a positive coefficient and probably be significant, because I see again that these sales have a positive relationship with time. As time goes on, the sales have gone up. So aside from that, I also noticed that there's some seasonality, that I see these jumps that are occurring fairly frequently, and if I zoomed in I might be able to get a sense of where exactly they're happening. Well, they're happening in all the year 10s, all the fourth quarters. That shouldn't be too surprising. So that's why I made a dummy variable to account for all of the fourth quarters that are happening. So when that is 1, then I expect sales to be a lot higher. So I should get a significant coefficient for that. Positive, I would imagine. When it's the fourth quarter, you would expect things to go up. And as you can see, baby number 3 is crying now, so I may have to head back down and get him to calm down. I guess he'd calm down. Okay, so that's what my quarter 4 dummy variable is supposed to be. This recession dummy, you can see that, well, you can't really see it here, but the data kind of flattens out a little bit. If you zoomed in maybe just on from until 2004, it might be a little more pronounced. But we did have a recession, theoretically. We did have a recession in 2001, so I would want to account for that. If I know that that was a situation that occurred in my data, then I would probably want to account for that anyway, even, again, despite how it makes the results look. I can certainly see in the scatter plot that the Great Recession that we had. So I can see all these factors are showing up in my scatter plot. I can see that there's this time trend that's happening, upward trend over time. I can see this seasonality that's occurring, and I can see that, well, aside from the linear time trend, there are these slumps that are occurring at irregular intervals when we had these 2 recessions. So at this point, my dummy variables are trying to account for all of those. Well, my t variable and the other dummy variables are trying to account for those. So we've done that. Report a forecasting equation that you think is the best and provide us forecasts of sales for those particular years. Okay, well, I want to, again, get a forecasting equation that is going to account for this. So I want to be able to predict, and I think everything here was supposed to be just with the seasonally unadjusted. Yeah. So if you wanted to, if you could look at a scatter plot of the seasonally adjusted and see what that looks like, and run regressions there too. But again, since we're accounting for the fourth quarter situation, if you did the seasonally adjusted data and you included a regression with the Q4 variable in it, it would probably show up as insignificant, because the seasonal adjustment that the Fed is doing in constructing this ECO MSA variable is probably going to account for the seasonality that's occurring in the fourth quarter. So that might be something interesting for you to do. Run a regression like I'll show below, where I'm going to use the unadjusted data as the dependent variable, and then you go ahead and use all the same independent variables, including Q4, but try using the seasonally adjusted data as your dependent variable, and I would bet that the Q4 variable is going to show up as insignificant. But I think that all three of these variables, the T, the Q4, and the recession, those should be important. Those should be significant, again, just based on what I know about our history with those two recessions and what I can see in the data with the time trend and with the fourth quarter showing up. So I'm going to go to my data tab, data analysis. Let's do a regression, and I'll show you about doing a see, the problem with, I was going to talk about doing a trend line, but the problem with using a trend line is that it's not going to be able to account for any of the seasonality or any of the recession stuff in it. So I'm just going to run a straight regression to get my forecasting equation. My Y range will be my unadjusted data, so I'll go all the way down there. My X range will be, and I think all of these variables are important, so I'll highlight those, including the labels. And I'll come back here. I'll include the labels. I don't want my constant to be 0, because the beginning of this graph is starting in 1999. I wouldn't have any presumption that sales would be 0, so I'm not going to click that. Everything else looks okay. Let me pick my output range to be right below my little scatter plot here. Hit OK. I wonder if I ran over any of my, nope. So from the original, that was kind of the first regression that I ran on the original Excel file that you could download from Moodle, and then I played around with a few others here too. So, but we'll just talk about the first one, since I'm probably spending a lot of time talking about this anyway. 14 minutes, and you all thought this was going to be short. So here's my regression results. I can see that intercept discussion is not really all that important. I can certainly see that this model has pretty good explanatory power. I mean, 95% of the variation in unadjusted sales is accounted for by the variables that I have. My T variable is significant, highly. It's a T-stat of 33, which is monstrous. My fourth quarter dummy variable is also significant, 5.7. P-value is very small. And my recession dummy is the least significant of those three, but it's still significant at the 5% level, which to an economist, again, would just, usually we either have a 10% or a 5% cutoff. So we'd call that significant. So all three of those are showing up significant. What's happening is that I coded the recession dummy variable as 1 when we had a recession and 0 otherwise. So you would expect that when we have a recession, sales would be lower than they would otherwise. And if I look at my coefficient here, I can see that it's negative. So what does that mean? Well, mathematically, it means that any time that the recession dummy increases in value, then I should see a drop in sales. Well, as far as the table goes, the only time that it increases is when it switches from a 0 to a 1. So when I go from not being in a recession to being in a recession. And that should be associated with a drop in sales, and the fact that the coefficient is negative is evidence of that, or confirmation of that. All of the other ones, the other two variables, the T variable was positive, which again we would have expected as time goes on. Then we just saw that this linear trend was going up. So as time goes on, then my sales increased, so that's what I expected. when I coded the Q4 variable as a 1 in the fourth quarter, then when the Q4 variable increases, like going from third quarter to fourth, or any of the other quarters to the fourth, then that should be associated with an increase in sales too. And the fact that I see that coefficient being positive is what I expect. So it's kind of, all of these results are kind of confirming what I expected to happen when I looked at the scatter plot by itself. Let me see. Again, you can run the other equations if you want. You could run the other models using maybe, again, use the unadjusted data and then take out the t variable, or take out the Q4, or take out the recession dummy variable if you want. But I think, at this point I've kind of given you a description. I've shown you how I would go about at least setting up the problem to answer the questions that are in the PowerPoint slide. So you should be able to handle doing the rest of them. You should be able to handle doing the clothing tab and the sports tab. Let's see, but I think there was a question about the sports tab. So let me try going in here and maybe running a regression. I think there was a question about which of the variables I was using as my dependent variable. And for some reason, let's see, I have a t and a t squared. And I have results up there down at the bottom where I have t and t squared. So let's see what happens. Go to my data, analysis, regression. Am I in the right page? Am I in the right tab? Yeah. Okay, so I want to do unadjusted as my y variable, and it's got to go a lot lower than it currently is. All the way to the bottom. X range, I'll just go ahead and use the t and the t squared. Go to the bottom. They look like these are different size columns too. 75, 72. I'll just make that 72. Labels, output range. Give me closer to the other one. And those results are definitely different. Using the, I'll call these the not seasonally adjusted results. Let me try with the adjusted results were. That'll be column B, so I'm just going to go in and change these to B's. Oops. Let me change my output range so I'm not overwriting the other ones to right there. Okay. 3973. Yeah, I don't know. Why did I do that? I had these initial results using the seasonally adjusted data as my dependent variable. I'm trying to figure out when these things are peaking. This is all monthly data, and it certainly looks like they're peaking in the 12th month. And these are sales of sporting goods, hobby, book, and music stores. Anyone ever go to a music store? So those are certainly peaking in December. So if I was going to run a regression again, I'd probably use another, maybe not a Q4 variable, but I might use a December dummy variable. See that? So you can try doing that. I just ran a regression on the adjusted data. So you could try, and you might get results that are similar. I can't exactly remember why I just used the adjusted data in the regression results that I reported on the initial sheet. So, don't know. Whoever asked me that question, again, I made these up a couple years ago, and so I think most of the times it was looking at this data and finding it like 5 minutes before class started and being like, oh, that looks cool. Let's do some regressions on that. So, can't give you any better answer than that. Hopefully this little video helped. If you have any other questions, let me know. I gotta go stick a pacifier in his mouth. Hopefully he'll be quiet the rest of the night. Talk to you all later.